Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Camille Craft is here on a sacred mission to empower, inspire, support, and activate the journey of returning home to oneself, embodied, awakened, and free. She walks in deep devotion to the mystical and healing arts, fusing astrology, ritual, subconscious reprogramming, and shadow work to awaken the power within. A dedicated student and keeper of the esoteric arts, Camille expertly weaves ancient and timeless wisdom to reestablish self-sovereignty and unleash the possibility of your soul. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. That must be a fun description to write.
100%. Yeah, it took a little while to write it, to be honest. It's like, how do I nail down exactly what I do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, for folks that aren't familiar with you, would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you're up to in the world right now?
Yeah. My name obviously is Camille Craft. Thanks for introducing me. I run a platform. I'm the owner and creator of Vital Mystic, where we learn how to utilize astrology, subconscious reprogramming, shadow work to really amplify our power and create the lives that we truly desire. I'm really, really into choosing the subtle path, the path that is truly meant for you based on your particular astrology, what your soul came here to learn, and really coming into that state of self mastery through the articulation of those different points of your astrology chart and what is unlocked within that space of destiny, karma, and purpose. So that's basically what I do. With lack of better words, I'm kind of a professional witch. I teach people how to utilize ritual and plants and herbs and energy and all of those beautiful and amazing things, but to really kind of like catalyze and create what they really want and what they're being called forward to do. So I've been weaving recently it with a lot of business integrations for spiritual entrepreneurs. But yeah, a lot of soul purpose work and just helping people understand themselves and what they're doing here and what the next steps are and how to create that life that they truly desire. And that's been calling them forward for maybe many, many years. So
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, your work is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Have you always been kind of witchy?
Yeah, actually, I've always been that way. Yeah. My grandmother was an astrologer. And so her name was Ophelia. Her birthday was like 3 days after mine. Mine is right around equinox. And so we're both Libras, but she used to drive like a gold bug and like got her like Masters of Arts from San Francisco University, like back in the 70s. So like way before her time. But she kind of like initiated me on that path and like mapped out my entire chart, like wrote it when I was born, et cetera, et cetera. So I still have that piece of paper and it kind of was always this like other part of my family. She passed when I was really young, but it was like always this interest in the esoteric, And when I was in 6th grade, I think I got my hands on like a spell book or something. Like obviously this is many years ago. Now I'm 36. So this was many, many years ago, way before it was like way before Harry Potter, way before any of those things. And I just remember getting my hands on this spell book and just be like, oh my gosh, like I'm home, And I just like made my little pentacle with like little wire and like me and my like 3 girlfriends, like who lived around the corner, we would just like get together and do these little rituals. And I came from a very traditional family other than my grandmother. She was kind of like the rainbow sheep of the family, if you want it, with lack of better words. But because she passed when I was super young, it was like always had that interest, but it wasn't like harnessed or, I wasn't like directed on that path, but it was always there in the background. And ultimately, I kind of just always grew up with this interest, always checked in with astrology, always like did that. But then series of events have happened in my life over the last about 15 years that really helped me align with that path and really understand that that's actually the path for myself and that I was actually never really meant for like, what do I want to say? The picket fence. You know what I mean? Sure. So that's like, yeah, it's always been there. It's always been there for sure.
Got it. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That just made me remember, I think I was also in 6th grade I was raised like part like kind of Catholic. We were like half-hearted Catholics. Like we would go to church on Sundays and kind of that was it. And I
Right.
never liked it. I hated it.
Me too. Yeah. I was
But
like,
there
what
was,
am I doing
yeah,
here?
I know. I remember like I would count all of the lights in the church and then I'd count all the pieces of stained glass just to try to get through. Anyway,
Right.
but I,
I
for
love
some
that.
reason, like as I got a little older, I think there was a point where I suddenly got kind of curious about it. Like I kind of woke up and was like, what is this really though? And for whatever reason, we didn't go to church that week, that one time that there was like a window for me to be
Mm.
curious about it. And so I had a little ceremony on my bedroom floor. And it was like, I think of that as being like my first ceremony. I had this little rosary and a little candle. I had like a little requiem,
Oh my
put
God. I
probably little
love it.
trinkets in a circle, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's little witchiness in us all the ceremonial, all the ritual, all the things, it's all there. So
yeah.
yeah, I love that story.
So was it a big, when did you start sharing this part of you openly, I guess, is what I'm curious
Yeah, that's
about.
a really great question because it's a big part of I guess my story. I would say when I started to share this openly and publicly, I kind of came out of what I like to say is came out of the broom closet, probably like end of 2019, like end of 2019, beginning of 2020.
Mhm.
Before that, I had an herbalism platform. So I had a physical product line where I am and was and am an herbalist, but where I created tinctures and tonics and body oils. And then over time, I had like got this business mentor and I was like, man, I just really want to talk about the moon. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I just want to like, I kind of got tired of like talking about the, just the plants and like something really like my intuition was like, talk about the moon, talk about how you've been moving with the moon, the way the rituals that you do for your business, And I was like, really, do I really want to talk about that? And to like kind of really come out of the broom closet with, lack of better words, but so it was about that time, 2019 to 2020 transition. I also started shortly before that, kind of leaning in, talking about the moon and astrology, and kind of connecting to plants, which is like some people know it as after herbalism.
Mhm.
And I just like started to kind of like weave all these intricacies that I really was into, and obviously I had been on my spiritual journey for many years before that. My younger brother passed away in 2011, and I kind of was already on the path. Obviously, it's been a big part of my life, but that really directed me on the path and really had me question ask the big questions at 23 years old, and just like really kind of like put myself into that spiritual path. So it was kind of building for many years, for almost a decade. And then I kind of came out of the broom closet and I started to share my practice with ritual and how it had helped me through my brother's passing, my only sibling passing away, numerous different life transgressions, like also helping me create sales in my business, like, so I started to kind of talk about it. And this mentor at the time, she was also a witch, and she was just like, well, why don't you make ritual kits? Like you can still infuse the herbs, you can match the herbs to like what's going on in the sky, you can still talk about astrology. And that's kind of how it initiated. My first kit was released the weekend we shut down for the pandemic. The
Mm.
US shut down. It was the first, and it literally was for the Aries new moon because I initiated it around that time. And so, and I sold maybe like two kits, and I was like, I don't know if this is the route, but like obviously everyone was in a little bit of a panic. But the next time that I released kits, which was for the Taurus new moon, I completely sold out. And so I just started to kind of like, I hadn't been offering like readings or anything like that yet, but I started to offer readings, and I started to just really start to share my gifts because that's what I was being called to do. And there's like, obviously everyone's sitting at home, and I was just like, I know how to read energy, like I know what I'm doing. It's like it's time for me to just kind of like, even if it was just like buy donation, let's just have some fun since we all have this extra time, you know what I mean? And so it kind of just like evolved with these ritual kits. I started, I went viral the first few, probably the first time in like 2020. I went from 4,000 to like 15,000 followers, and it was just like everybody was just like, kind of like creating and like inspired by these rituals I would share. And at the time, I was still doing the rituals live on Instagram. And
Mm.
so we would also share, I would have another collaborator that would share a free yoga class. And it was just like this beautiful community kind of involvement. And it just kind of grew over the last few years. And like, what year are we in? We're in 2023. So it's technically only been a few years since that's happened. But now it's just like this huge conglomerate of, ability and like community to share with each other around the world that engages with ritual and really like utilizes astrology and really taps into their power. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch so many people come together around it. And all because like I decided to get out of my own way and, share that I was a witch and, share this, my personal practice with people, which by the way, for anyone, who's listening to this, that scared the shit out of me. You know what I mean? I studied to be a doctor. I have a pre-medical degree. I have many degrees and research degrees and stuff like that. And so to make this pivot for me was just like, okay, so now you're going to be publicly a witch. You know what I mean? And so it was this whole thing, but it ultimately was this reclamation of who I really was. And this like given last name of Craft, like all the signs and things were there. I think as I was like all my life asking myself like what my purpose was, what am I doing here? How do I help people? And it just finally all wove together when I was able to just really trust myself and allow for Vital Mystic to flourish from this space of ritual and coming in. And now we've added, of course, other modalities into those ritual subconscious reprogramming, shadow work, as I've learned in my own practice, that really helps unlock so much. And so just, yeah, it's been such a beautiful journey. It's been an incredible ride. And yeah, and it feels really good that I'm home now. It feels really good to be in that space. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's one of your like secret favorite things about what you do?
One of my favorite things I would say is like when people have an aha moment. Like I could be like sitting there with them. Maybe I'm like talking about astrology, or maybe it's like on my lives. I'm on Instagram on my lives, or I would say, or people after the ritual and they're just like, they message me and they're like, you just basically cleared, something for me that 12 years of therapy couldn't clear. You know what I mean? And it just like, I get emotional talking about it because like that literally, that feeds my soul. It really gives me kind of like this essence of like looking back on all the intense things that I've experienced over the first 30 years of my life and losing my brother the way that I did. And it really gives this healing for me to be able to offer that and to see that, and how that my own journey with that dance of grief really kind of comes in and it's able to touch and help so many other people. And so I think just like having that connection with people, or like people coming into my life and be like, oh my gosh, you just like, this is the exact message that I needed to hear at this time. And it's interesting because for so long, I don't know if anyone here knows astrology very well, but I have a Chiron in Gemini, which I am like deep fear of public speaking, also writing, also sharing, just like connecting and what other people think of me. So for me to become an influencer and to share my voice and my perspective, it was frightening. Like I remember like many, many years just sitting in like women's ceremonies or like, circles or whatever, and just like not even being able to talk. I was just so frightened of using my voice and sharing my perspective. And so ultimately, as having a spiritual based business does, it really is that conduit for us to really come into our power and to really understand that purpose. And if, one Chiron is one of the main things that I look at people's chart for. And it's like, now I can look back on it and it's like, yeah, that's the very thing that you actually needed to lean into in order to really unlock what you were meant to be doing. So that ultimately, I think that whole transformation process, that essence of being that conduit, that essence of my own personal growth and journey and sharing that story and introspection, that part for me, when I see it reflected back to me with people's aha moments or breakthroughs, or just thank you so much for clearing that for me, touch it, like moving that or those memories or that energy, like I just like that for me is gold, and that's what keeps me going every day. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad that you're using your voice, and it's way more powerful, when you get to learn or witness somebody who's like overcome the thing. Like nobody really wants to learn, like how to be rebellious from somebody who's just like always
Rebellious.
Fuck you to
Yeah,
everything,
because it's
or
your nature. Yeah, exactly.
and it's way more powerful, I feel like, especially with folks that tend to be on the quiet side. It's like, I can understand. I mean, I've had bouts of that too, for sure, and still have situations like that. But it's like, I think part of it, that fear of speaking, is because you don't really realize, on some level you probably do, but like, because what you have is so powerful that it's really scary.
Right.
But then when it does come out,
100%.
it's so moving.
Right, exactly. And I just like, I have people all the time. Even last night, I was like out with some new friends and they're like, wow, I really love the way your mind works. And I was like, man, like it's like all these years I just kind of like kept it to myself, but it's ultimately it's like, oh, I don't want it to be too much. But it's just like, I think the people who are maybe a little bit more introverted or quiet, like there's a lot of introspection going on, you know what I mean? And so just like coming out of our shell and kind of sharing that too, and just like really being able to share those perspectives that without that, like we all see things in a unique way, and being able to share that and being called forward to do that, it's so healing too if we feel that way as well. Yeah.
What are you dreaming about in your life and your business and your work right now?
Yeah. Well, right now I feel Vital Mystic. I've built out, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like this last year, I really focused on building out a lot of programs for spiritual based entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
and being able to help people kind of strategize and like really create a foundation for themselves in a successful business. And so right now we're actually kind of like preparing for eclipse season, a little bit more intensives, but I would say as far as a dream for Vital Mystic, I think it's just growth. I think it's being able to bring, not just like monetarily, but, I had a mentor at one point tell me, like, okay, if you have that $1 million business, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that you're touching with this work that millions of people around the world are doing ritual and that they're like utilizing this beautiful power of astrology? And it's like, that's that vision for me. You know what I mean? Like, that's my big dream. That's like my big dream, is to give people the tools that they already have within inside themselves to move energy, to really catalyze, to like really create that foundation of success, not just monetarily, but for their own version of success and what that looks like, and not to talk themselves out of it. And so, just really kind of like when I think about it, I want it to be a huge global community. I want it to be people that can connect with each other. Like all the people who just like know that there's a different path for themselves, that they don't have to do it alone. And that it's just this, maybe eventually some in-person and live events where we can come together, some bigger gatherings or ways that we can connect with each other through the art and craft of ritual and really communing with the power that we already hold. So I think that that's ultimately like for sure big dream. I think also for myself, like just, kind of like finding that beautiful balance between work and play, and
Yes.
just really kind of coming back into that essence of like, we also need to rest and receive, but we also can do the work and create that beautiful change in the world that we want to see as well.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to ask you, this is like a super broad question, but I kind of want to just ask you about possibility in general. Like, what do you think about it? What do you notice about it? How do you deal
Yeah.
with it?
Um, everything is possible. That's basically like, that's the every like possibility is really just like this essence of whatever you can dream up. You know what I mean? And it's just like, as somebody who has jumped numerous times or like coming out of the broom closet or all these things, I feel like possibility is really created when we go or make the decisions that are kind of harder to make, or that we're scared to make, or we're frightened to make. And then we kind of like leap into the unknown. And so possibility is actually just like this essence of living your life with not just with the unknown, but in this co-creative of trust. And this has actually been a huge subject that I've been going on with a client, and it's been coming up quite a bit recently, of how much, when we are creating like a spirit-led life, or we're wanting to create something that, maybe not like the 9 to 5 or like the normal, what we're told to create with success, it's like that essence of the unknown and being in that state of trust is what opens up to possibility. And so I really believe that people have so many different life trajectories, but those life trajectories have to be chosen. And so, especially during like, at certain times of your life, specifically, like I'm going to talk about it now. This is probably going to release a little bit after the eclipse time. But eclipses and the eclipse portals and gateways are really important times to really kind of review those choices and align yourself with those trajectories. And a lot of times, this is kind of like what I really focus on in my work is actually not what, not so much being unclear on the desire, or like what we're trying to manifest, but ultimately the resistance that is there around what we truly want. Right. And so maybe we talk ourselves out of having that beautiful, healthy relationship and we stay in the one that doesn't feel like the right fit. And just because it's safe or secure. Or maybe we talk ourselves out of having that big, beautiful, amazing business because we're afraid to make that jump or invest in ourselves. And it's like, I really think that possibility is mirrored by our ability to kind of trust in that space of our dreams and our desires. And that little subtle call, it's never like a huge call. It's kind of like, it's that subtle like nudge. It's like, oh yeah, but there's this other path that's over here. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's this little subtle thing. And it's just like, cause it's like you get to a point in your life and you're like, this is not what I thought I was going to be like. You know what I mean? Like you get to those goals or those things that you thought were going to make you happy. And then in those moments, you're like, well, where is my soul really calling me? Like, is it calling me to go take this flight to Paris and go meet the love of my life? You know what I mean? And like, or is it calling me to jump into, this new container or this mentorship container, and then I'm going to learn all these skills? Like all those big decisions of what has created and my most insane wild possibilities that I didn't even know I could create was by taking that first step with trust and into that subtle path that wasn't like, hey, do this obvious thing. It was really deep introspection, and it was like, hey, look over here, right? And like there is another way, right? And being able to kind of just like look to the left and find that off the beaten path track that opens up to an incredible amount of unforeseen, amazing experiences that you could have never dreamed up, but that always bring you to the right place. So that, to me, that's what possibility means to me. But we have to be able to choose it. And a lot of times it's all the decisions that you talk yourself out of, right? It's all the things. It's like the scariest decisions. It's like leaving that relationship or leaving that job, or but it's like kind of like not eating away at you, but like it's like nudging you. And if you don't choose it, at some point it will choose it for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I love how you named it like the subtle voice, because I can totally hear mine. And it's sort of like always kind of in the background being like, I wonder about this thing.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And that's like, I feel like now there's been many moments in my life I didn't listen to that subtle voice. You know what I mean? And it got real loud. And then I had a universal smackdown. And then it was like, cool, you're not listening. Boom, like go this way, And so now it's kind of like I use that as a pivot in my business. It's like I check in and I ask, and I'm just, in my business, in my life, I'm like, am I like, where's my next step? Instead of me trying to like manifest all the time or like being in control, it's actually taking a step back, listening, and then allowing for myself to take the aligned action. Most of the time it's going to scare the shit out of me, but it ultimately leads to my growth and evolution as well.
I know that a lot of people struggle with feeling like they've listened to that voice before and it's led them astray. How have you worked with that in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could get into like the subtle energy of like what intuition and what anxiety is, and like listening to that voice. And it's like, there's been many moments where I've listened to that voice and I'm like, how did I end up here? You know what I mean? Like we're kind of in that subtle situation. But I think it's, this ability to kind of like really, for me and my experience, my intuition comes with a very soft voice, right? It's very soft. And it's never harsh. It's never judgmental. And being able to listen to that voice, even if it doesn't turn out the way that I expected, there was an essence or a learning lesson along that line that I would have never unlocked had I not chosen that direction. And now I think about, okay, all those years that I ran my business basically on intuition, which was great. I did all the things. But then there was also this essence of, other beliefs or things that were going on in my system I look back on, which was like a fear of lack or like a fear of, like maybe not really like putting myself out there or like, all these different things that might have quote unquote led to a perceived failure. But here's the thing is that I think like the book is called like Think and Grow Rich. It was written back in the 20s, and there's a story that's shared in there. And it talks about this miner who like digs and digs and digs and digs for like years, right? And then they're just like, they totally like give up on the land. They're like, whatever, like I totally give up. And somebody else buys the land, digs like 5 more feet, and strikes one of the biggest gold mines ever. And so here's the thing about that is that I feel like a lot of times especially with my personal path, is that I wanted to give up so many times because things didn't work right away. But ultimately, my intuition said, you need to keep going. You know what I mean? You got to keep going. You got to, like, there was still this yes, even after like the failed events, or there was still this yes after things not turning out right or the pandemic or whatever it was. And so it's never a loss, right? And it's like it's always a redirection. You know what I mean? And there was something that was unlocked. I've learned more from my past mistakes and failures than I have ever learned from my wins. And so ultimately it's created this very robust wisdom of being able to how to like move with energy and how to listen and tap in and redirect. And so being able to have that perspective of, I know every single step of my life is not a mistake, but ultimately it's there to lead me to this next opening or evolution. Like I think about sometimes the events that didn't go well when I had a product-based business line. And it was like I made maybe one sale and I drove half the state or something. I just spent all my money on this event or something like that. And I could sit there and tell the story that this event was a complete loss. But the one person who bought a product from me later on became one of my best customers. And then they actually, when I started doing readings and everything else, told everybody about me. So you actually never know how that energy is going to spiral out and come back. Right. And so this is the thing with people who are any of us who have chosen a decision and it sounded like a good idea, but then you got to the end result and then you're like, this person wasn't what I thought they were, da 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 da. But ultimately, there was a golden thread in there. There was an essence for you to deeply learn about yourself in those experiences. And then also to show yourself, okay, actually, I'm powerful enough to not only trust myself, but I'm powerful enough to move through perceived failure. And I'm allowing myself to learn. I'm allowing for myself to fuck up. I'm allowing for myself to be human and to allow myself to kind of be redirected, because that actually what that does over time is that it harnesses this essence of really getting to know who we are, really getting to know like what is for us and what is not. And then it's not like I look back at all my past relationships and like, oh, well, all of that was a waste. It's like, no, no, no. It's like every single one of them gave me another lesson of how to choose myself and my truth and who I am. And I am so grateful for those things. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't be the person I am today without those things as well. So I think it's just kind of like, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Maybe in hindsight, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, man, that redirection was exactly what I needed at that time. And I think that my personal universal smackdowns have been exactly that. In the midst of my greatest failures in life, or the midst of the greatest chaos, like, I think I shared the story with you where I tried to like move to LA and it didn't work out and I got redirected to Santa Cruz. That redirection was unforeseen, but now being here in this space right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. And it's just like there's something really beautiful was waiting for me, but I had to let go in that moment of this dream of living down there in the city, et cetera, and really allow myself to be led. So it's kind of, I really feel like it's about perspective and just really coming into that space once again of trust that things are truly happening for you. And if something closes the doors or a relationship ends or something doesn't turn out the way that you thought, allow yourself once again to be led, listen in and ask, take a step back if something happens and it's like, okay, like, where am I being led to now? And for me, in my experience, it's always improving. It's always getting better because I'm becoming more clear with all of those decisions and things that I've experienced.
Mhm, mhm. And I ask, I'm curious, what edge do you feel like you're up against right now for yourself in your life?
That's beautiful. It's so funny because I used these exact words in a conversation with somebody yesterday. My personal edge, you know, I am definitely have been a workaholic. You know what I mean? And it's like I know you probably can sympathize with this. Running your own business is like it's a thing. And then the thing that you love is actually working and it's making money and all of those beautiful things. And so I actually took a year off. I like moved up. I don't know if I moved up to this tiny little town for a year and I wasn't surrounded by any community, friends, or family. And I really was able to structure my business in a way that was really successful. And right now in my life, I'm learning to balance, play, fun, and then work. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds so simple, but for somebody who has been driven so long about trying to find her purpose and trying to build something, and then I finally built it, and now I'm kind of like, oh yeah, all the other parts of life, like having a relationship, being in love, maybe eventually having a family, all of these other beautiful things of life. I've just like now I'm like learning like, okay, actually like it's okay to let go. You know what I mean? And I think for me, that edge of like, this essence of like having to always be on top, not on top of it, or having to always push forward or have this like big drive. I know there's probably some people who can sympathize with that of just like this huge calling and like really wanting to help and like wanting to do or whatever it is. But there's this invitation right now for me to soften. And I think for me, as somebody who's very fiery, who's very driven, that's not my normal MO, right? And it's allowing for myself to be led instead of constantly leading and allowing myself to witness the other beautiful intricacies of what life has to offer through the art of relating, through the art of music, through being back into like a social situation or community that really kind of is just like they like prioritizes fun, and it's like meeting that edge of just like what is this delicate balance, like how do I integrate all of these things together, and also like not guilt trip myself for taking a break, and just allowing myself to like, okay, we don't need to like help change everybody's lives every single day. It's like you can take a step back for a second, remember about the other things that you like to do. Like you like to paint, you like to go for walks, you love to like meditate, like all of these beautiful things. And like you love to dance, you love to listen to live music, and it's like really being able to balance that. I feel it has been the major edge for me currently in my life.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you too. We actually had a ceremony this last weekend, and it just like happened to be that everybody that was here um were very driven people.
Mhm.
And we were
Mhm.
talking a little bit about that like work and play piece and how tricky it can get, because for most of us, even the things that we listed as like what we do for fun, we're still could kind of
Yes.
qualify as work, even though like even like my
100%. This is
actual work is fun, but like even my side part, like I love gardening and like all these other things that everybody was listening are still like all kind of like constructive or productive in some way, or like add
right.
to some part of the thing that you're trying to build. And
Right.
so it was really interesting just trying to like pull, and it's not bad, but it's just interesting trying
Right.
to pull that apart and be like, yeah, but can you have any fun for the sake of like only just that, just fun, just joy for
Right.
joy. That's it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, this is a huge subject that I've been, kind of dancing with because it's I feel very blessed to have a business that's successful. And that it's like the things that I used to do for fun are or like talk about for fun all turned into my business. You know what I mean? Which is amazing, which is so beautiful. That's a dream, right? And now I'm just kind of like, okay, so now what do we do? You know what I mean? It's like, but I just like, you can get into that cycle of like, but I'm having a lot of fun. You know what I mean? I love talking about astrology. I love doing ritual. I love doing shadow work. But ultimately it's like, it's that edge, of just like taking a few steps back. And it's just kind of like, all right, actually, maybe I'm just going to go for a walk. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just like, it doesn't need to have like a purpose or to move the needle on some project around me or whatever it is. And that's like kind of like that essence. I've been every day I have like a beautiful little river right behind me here where I'm living in Santa Cruz. And now I have this daily ritual where I just take my little journal and I go down there every day and I just like write what wants to come through,
Mm,
which it's like, it's not like a purposeful write. It's not like I have to listen to my higher self. It's just like whatever wants to come through and recalibrate at the end of the day. And it's been really beautiful to just allow for that to come through. So it's about the little things, right? It doesn't have to move the needle all the time. Yeah.
yeah, love it. Well, circling back to some of the things you offer and your work with ritual for folks that are just wanting to get more of it in their life, where is a good,
Mhm.
how can they start that? How can they weave that in a little bit more?
Yeah. Ritual is really a magical thing. Obviously anyone can do ritual at any point. Rituals are like brushing your teeth or like putting nice face oil on your face or whatever. But as far as like ritual and astrology and like really being able to commune with the elements, some obviously most people like know new and full moon rituals. That's like the basics. But when we're kind of moving with the essence of deepening our ritual practice, I really love to initiate people with bath rituals. That's like a really easy place. It's like fun and creative. If you don't have a bath, you can definitely get like a big bowl and just like mix a couple things in there, put some salt in there, put some flowers in there, and pour it over you in the shower. And so I love to initiate people with that because it's kind of like the beautiful part. And if anyone comes to my page, it's like Vital Mystic on Instagram with a little dot. Make sure you've got the blue check mark by me because there's all sorts of, you know, fakers out there these days, our scam artists as well. But when we initiate with ritual, the beautiful part is that we get to put things together and it's like this co-creative process. And so when we're able to really start with ritual and kind of like get some herbs in our hand or place some salt in our hands or some dirt or some rocks or some crystals, it's like this essence of creating, right? Creating these physical anchors with your intention and moving through this process. It's kind of almost like an art project, but it's just like really this essence of communing with the elements that surround you, right? And the elements that also make you up, as well as the subtle energies of the cosmos. And so, a wonderful way, obviously, is to start doing bath rituals, maybe your new and full moon rituals, or just like being clear with like what are the things that are coming up even on a daily basis. One of the biggest things I tell people to do is, manifesting work is powerful, but you're always manifesting. Like, focus on the release work. Think about like the rituals that are going to support you in like writing down, like, all right, well, Sally was a real jerk at work today. You know what I mean? It was just like, what are the things that are coming up there? Like I'm talking about real tangible stuff, like what are the things that are going to help us kind of come into this space of self sovereignty even quicker and more in alignment. And so that we're not feeling like we're, bounced around like ping pong balls all day, but that we're actually learning how to command our energy. And so ritual is that essence of coming home, right? And so even if it is at the end of the day, writing down all your frustrations or worries, but like getting them out on a piece of paper and burning it and letting it go, that is going to feel 10 times better than you holding it on for the next 3 weeks until something else happens, right? And so ultimately, I think just kind of communing with that practice of release, like that's one of the most powerful practices that I, find for myself that has really helped and created the space for me to be in alignment with the desires that I truly hold. And so if there's something in your life that you've been desiring or wanting to kind of call in, but you've been feeling this resistance or that you feel that you're blocked or you're not sure where to start, go to that narrative, go to those beliefs, go to those things that are telling you, write them down, write them down and like write that narrative down. Maybe you can trace it back to at some point in your life where you experienced for the first time shame because you wanted to be an artist in your life or something like that. Like, go back to that experience and write those emotions down like you're experiencing it right now, and let it go. Because ultimately, that's going to give you the permission to really pursue what you want. And it's really just about taking the brake pedal off. And that's it. Because you are already powerful. You're already magnetic. You already have everything that you already need inside of you to create what you want. And so ritual really is about that. And obviously, if you come to my page, I have tons of free tips or ways to call back your power. And then to initiate like any of the programs, we have like a bath ritual guide. There's like all sorts of different fun things that you can start with. Also the alchemy membership if you just want to be led. But ultimately it's just, you know, just start with giving yourself the time and space to move towards your desires. And the best way to do that is through release work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, you've offered for the listeners, you have Visionaire, a free amplifying ritual experience, and we'll definitely share the link for that and other ways that people can get in touch with you and your work in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. You're such a joy. I love listening to you.
Thank you. No, that was great. Yeah, it was. Thanks for asking all these fun questions. I'm always like, oh yeah, I love this. Questions I don't think about myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what more you have up your sleeve, and I'm also excited I'm with you on this one for also I'm going to say our journey of more fun and more play.
100%. Yeah, that's what life is all about, right?
Again, thanks so much for joining. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This question is from an Instagram user, and the question is, how do I tap into my healer gift fully? And I love this question because it's one of the things that I teach in shaman school, or I should say the method that you can use to tap into your healer gift fully is the same method that I use in shaman school to help develop our advanced healers and get them incredible results. And so this is actually a 4-part process, but you're actually going to be working all 4 of these components at the same time. So we want to leave this old idea that things happen in a linear way where it's like step 1, step 2, step 3, and now I have it, and get used to a more holistic approach. So this is the grow method that I use. And in that includes growing your spiritual gifts. So restoring your self-love and self-trust, offering your worker services, and then wisdom, wealth, and leadership embodiment. So all 4 of those components need to be happening at the same time. Basically, all the time, you want to be developing your gifts, your self-love and self-trust, aka your inner work, your self-healing. You want to be actually doing action steps. So there's a way that a lot of us get locked in and don't feel like we're growing because we're not actually doing anything externally. We're sort of just thinking about it, or having situations where people come up and ask us advice, but we're not actually actively using our real gifts. We're just sort of like being a nice guide. Super powerful, wonderful place to be. And if the question is, how do you really tap into your true healer gifts? This is the way to do that. And then, of course, that embodiment piece where you are being it. And all 4 of these parts are just going to inform the other. So as you do your inner work, your self-healing, you're going to be unlocking more spiritual gifts. As you unlock more spiritual gifts, you might be embodying them more. As you embody them more, you might be offering your services, or doing a new program in your business, or taking some new intelligence into your corporate office. And then when you do that, you might then uncover some more self-healing. Or maybe when you bring that wisdom embodiment to the office, you then awaken a new gift. And so these pieces just keep cycling around, and you want all of them to be developed and grown all the time. And when all of those pieces are happening at the same time, you untap the higher potential of your healer gift much faster and in a far more developed way. Honestly, it surprises me. I'm still blown away by what we're capable of doing, and actually how easy it is for us to access these gifts. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, holtonhealingarts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.